Okay, I'm gonna record. Now we're gonna go live on Facebook. And if you want to go, do you have a Facebook account?
I do.
If you want to share it to your page, it's gonna be on my personal page. So if you go to Weston Hurt on Facebook and then
Can I
share
do
it,
that when we're still connected right now?
yeah, yeah, I think so.
Wait, wait, wait. Show me. Hold on. Facebook.
Yeah, you go to
Mhm.
Facebook and then you just search for me, and I think in a second we should be live, like now. Yeah,
All right.
now-ish.
Now it.
I think so. And so if you if you go to my Facebook now, your video is stopped, I guess, because you're looking at something else, but
Right, because I'm
um,
trying to find you. Okay.
got it.
So I'm looking at your Facebook page. Oh, I see you. Okay. And so then I can share this now?
Yeah, yeah, we
Ah.
should be good.
You think I'd know how to do this?
I think in this last 8 months, we have all become, on some degree or another, a little bit better at, oh, I don't know, audio engineering or all the computers. There she is. All the different things. I know I have had to, I was supposed to do a concert. There was like an opera in the parks thing, and we had to end up doing everything virtually. And so they sent us the microphones they wanted us to use, and we
Yeah.
we had to get a venue, but when you're trying to be like artist and sound engineer and whatever, it's just like, oh my God.
You end up
Oh,
doing all jobs very badly, basically.
yeah, exactly. That's what you kind of end up doing. So anyway,
Spread yourself too thin. Okay,
yeah,
I
no.
figured it out. I think I posted it on my Facebook. So,
Oh, good.
or
Well,
whatever. So, yeah.
if there's a single person who is not familiar with this lovely woman with me today, this is Isabel Leonard, two-time Grammy award-winning Fancy Pants, has sung everywhere in the world and done everything in the world. One of the things that I'm impressed with most is the interview you did with Alec Baldwin. I was like,
Oh,
who does this person not know? This is amazing. That was so incredible.
that was like that was just fun. And that was, I was really grateful that he had even said yes. Like we sort of knew each other through, we have a couple mutual friends, but we also had like seen each other at different events over the course of the years. And he used to
Right.
actually live in my teacher's old building.
Okay.
So I've been in the elevator a few times. Um,
It's
and
amazing.
so one of those crazy things that happened, and I kind of
Well,
reached out again. And I was like, I don't know if you remember me. And so,
that's the cool thing about, I guess right now, the
yeah.
people have time to do things that they might not in other worlds have the opportunity to do. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate you taking your time out of your schedule to be here with us, because I'm sure that I'm, me too. I mean, I know, we met at Juilliard, but how, the whole purpose of this show is to sort of have a casual conversation about the different struggles and challenges and sort of light bulb moments that we've all sort of experienced through our
Yeah.
education, but then going through like young artist training programs and getting into the
Mhm.
career, and maybe even like as we adopt new repertoire, like what are some of the things that we've experienced, like vocally, technically, specifically with vocal technique, and how that has sort of led to the journey that we are still on. But how did you first get into singing? I mean, I know that you like basically were born and then we're like, okay, okay, this is stage left, this is stage right. Right? Like, weren't you in like the children's chorus at Lincoln Center for like, you were in some kind of, I just remember that you were in some sort of fancy children's choir.
No, no. I started with dance when I was little first,
Oh,
and I
dance only.
danced.
Okay.
I danced with the Joffrey Ballet for a while. Well, I was at the Joffrey Ballet School when I was a young person, and then for a handful of years, like 8 or 9 years, and I did the Nutcracker twice when the Joffrey was performing at City Center for the holidays, and then Joffrey went and moved to Chicago, but that was even like after I stopped, I think.
Okay.
And then after that, I kept on dancing, and I used to go to steps a lot, and I would take dance classes steps when I was in high school. And then and I went to performing arts high school. So at that point I was mixing the two. I was singing much more because I went for voice and to LaGuardia, right, for singing.
So
And
you grew up in New York City.
I did. I grew up in Manhattan. I grew up in Chelsea, and then we moved to far away from Chelsea. And
Right.
so, but yeah, no, I've been in Manhattan my whole life, and yeah, just a city girl through and through. But yeah, what else? I mean, the singing, I always sang, since I was a little girl. Obviously, like my mother and I sang a lot together, and music was always a part of our household. And it's always, music and art. My father was a visual artist, so just the arts in general were appreciated. They were very appreciated in the house. I think I probably knew when I was little that I wanted to be in the theater. I didn't know what that totally meant at the time. I knew I liked to sing, but I was shy, like wallflower shy. Like I did not, I was shy. So it was an interesting thing that I always kind of knew inside that I wanted to be in the theater. But I was deathly shy. And so of course I never told anybody that either.
that you wanted to be in theater.
Yeah, it was sort of like one of those like silent wishes that you're like, if I say it out loud, it'll never come true kind of thing.
Right.
But again, I don't even know if at that time, being quite young, being like 11 or however old I was, if I knew what that really meant. I didn't know it meant being an opera singer. That is for sure. In fact, if you had said you're going to be an opera singer, I'd be like, yeah, right. I was like in my, like over my dead body.
So at what point did you make the transition from like formal dance training to like some sort of formal music training?
I mean, I stopped dancing like once I was like an early teen because I didn't want to be a ballerina, and I was like, that's what I would say. I would tell my mother, like, I will not, and I do not want to be a prima ballerina. So there's no way. Granted, funny enough is that I never would have been anyway. It's like, that's not my body type. It's just not what it is. So,
right.
So that wasn't really in the cards anyway. But I stopped because it was a contentious place for me to go as a young girl, because it was, I mean, I love my friends, but most people, I would say, don't have the greatest experiences in ballet class. Maybe now more than ever, because people are so much more aware of it, and there's so much more, what's the word? Accountability for teachers and things, right? But like before, my teachers, some of them, particularly at the end, once I was getting older, I had one that was really nasty, really hard, just mean, like could be mean, scary, just like that kind of person that was like scary, because if you didn't do something right, she'd be pissed, and
I think my extensive knowledge of ballet is watching the movie Center Stage, which is the cheesiest movie. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah, I have.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
But yeah, so, I would imagine. So when did you start so around the teenage years, like 13, 14 is when you were like, well, okay, I'm not going to dance anymore. I'm going to maybe try singing.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I mean, it wasn't like I'm done with dance, so then I'm going to go sing. It was more, I was done with dance, and then I also happened to like singing, and then I went to high school for singing. And then I sang in the choir, and I sang in the jazz band, and I sang in the musical theater shows. We did chorus line my senior year. We had a great time, and I was Maggie, which is funny because I played Maggie, the one who sings at the ballet, which again was all kind of funny, right? She's singing at the ballet, but they also gave me the part of Maggie because I was the one that had the highest range.
Right.
They wanted me to sing that part, right? Although I was like, give me Cassie, I can still dance. I was still young, I could still do this.
I bet.
Like I could not do it now, and certainly not to the extent of people like Robin Herder, who's like unbelievable in the musical theater world. Like these incredible dancing, singing actresses. It was high school, so like whatever. But yeah, so I went, I sang, and then as I guess got into junior, senior year, maybe it became more apparent that this was something that I was getting good at, or that I had a natural ability for.
Right.
And then I auditioned for a bunch of schools, and I auditioned for Juilliard, and I got in, and then I had a teacher, and then I ended up on this sort of classical path.
Right.
Yeah. And then, honestly, like the path after that unraveled rather, or not unraveled, but unfolded rather quickly, in a very fortuitous and lucky, wonderful way. And in a way, I never really had a chance to kind of say no, because also as a young person, you don't feel like you should say no to opportunities that come up.
Right.
Then 15 years go by and you're like, oh my God.
You're like, when? Oh,
Yeah. You're like, wow, that all happened.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
So in your mind, do you remember like round your junior, senior year? I mean, I assume you had private voice lessons as part of your studies at LaGuardia.
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, so you were just in ensemble stuff.
Yeah.
So when you started to audition for schools for undergraduate, did you already know at that point I'm going to go classical, or was it sort of a mix of like, well, maybe I can do like some Broadway or some like I can do.
Yeah. No, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at that point. The only thing I was sure of was that I was probably going to be a music major.
Okay.
Yeah, but I had ended up narrowing it down actually to two schools. One was Juilliard, and the other one was the Cap 21 program at Tisch
Oh,
at
okay.
NYU, their musical theater program.
Strong,
And
yeah.
yeah, and so I was either going to go there or I was going to go to Juilliard, and I had to spend a day in each place because I didn't know what to do. I was so entrenched in musical theater in high school.
Right.
Um, and I had done like Gilbert and Sullivan was probably the closest I had come to like full on opera. Uh, and then of all the crazy things, I remember my graduation, I think I sang the soprano part in the Rossini Stabat Mater,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which like goes up to that screaming high C at the end, all these kind of crazy things, so I was kind of all over the map. And then I spent a day at both schools, and it was just the luck of the cards that day that I got along better with the kids that were at Juilliard.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, I'm going to Juilliard.
Done and done. There you go.
Yeah.
And
And I was thinking
you
about that
studied with
today.
Edie Bears, right? You studied with Miss
Yeah.
Bears. So
Yeah.
do you remember like once you got in and once you started having these formal private lessons, do you remember like one of the first sort of like, oh, because you talk about how you would never think about being an opera singer, and you had so much experience sort of doing some musical theater stuff, so that the type of sound that teachers are trying to find, even in
Yeah.
undergraduate students, I mean, obviously we're trying to produce healthy singing, but do you remember when it was the first sort of light bulb moment for you where you were like, oh, so to sound like that, it's like this, like what that experience was like for you?
That's a really good question. I remember I remember undergraduate being so much of a roller coaster for all of us. Technically, you probably remember that too. Like it just felt
Of
like,
course.
it just felt like every day, like one day you would be doing really well. And you're like, I got it. I figured it out. I got it. We're good. Cool. I'm ready. And then the next day you're like, I don't got it.
There's lots
I
of
don't know.
inconsistencies.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know where it went. I clearly don't know how to do this. Or you would
For
have
sure.
like you'd have like growth patterns where you would grow, 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 and then you get to this plateau for a while with your voice.
Yeah.
And sometimes that plateau was good, and you would feel like, okay, I'm stabilizing. Like I'm getting this. And just as you were feeling really comfortable, you would start to grow again, which generally means it felt like crap, right?
Right. Right.
And so I just remember a lot of that, like all of us feeling kind of the same way.
Right.
I do remember, I think I remember more clearly those moments practicing or in lessons where I had to come to terms with the fact that I had to utilize my face more, that I had to actually open my mouth, or I had to create a vowel shape and be like, aha, oh, ooh, and be more like active, kind of proactive about it versus like,
Right.
oh, ma se pensi che sole odio fide varia mar, instead of being
Right.
like, ma se. I
Isn't
think I
that
remember
interesting?
that. I
That
think I
that is
remember.
true. That is
Yeah.
true. I mean, of course, the other big difference, right, from most musical theater performance, is amplified. You use a microphone of some sort. And so we have to learn how to use our bodies in a way that allows us to project over, an orchestra and into the hall.
Yeah.
Um, Talk a little bit about what your memories were in that. And, you studied with Miss Bears all the way through, like undergrad and grad school, right?
Yeah.
So what are, in your memories during that time? I mean, I know we're peeling back the history book, but what were some of your memories in regards to, like, what did she really harp on? What was her big principles? What were the things that you were like, oh yeah, okay, this is what, if I'm doing this, then I'm on the right track? What were sort of the things that really set it up for you?
You know, Edie has probably, obviously still, and certainly had, at least with me, like, she had such a loving approach always. She was never mad. I can't, at least with me, she was never mad or frustrated. I always came into work. There was
Right.
like no doubt, right? Always. But it wasn't like, I'm here to work, I'm going to get it right. It was just, I'm just here to listen. I'm here to do this. I'm here to keep on trying and keep on trying. And there were days of tears and there were days of joy and laughter.
Right.
And she took all of that and allowed me to have those moments and continue, especially in the moments of like tears. She would allow me to have those moments, but she would gently guide me back into the path. Like, it wouldn't be like, we're not going to wallow here too long. She'd always be like, oh, well, and let's go back to that phrase again. And
That's
I'd be
amazing.
like, okay, yeah, that's great.
Hold on.
I'd be like, it's fine. And I would start singing and be like, but I would, you would just do it. Right. So I think honestly, my biggest takeaway, especially from her, will always be that the minute I walked into my lessons, I was always able to just say, that's it. I'm here. I'm just going to be here and I'm just going to listen and I'm just going to try. I'm not going to pretend like I know, because I sure as hell didn't think I knew.
Right.
And her approach was also very organic. It was, it was never like, this muscle needs to do this or you need to do this. It was so much more about the full body being part of the process,
Right.
So it was activating the body through your singing. It wasn't just about you're not support more, because like, what does that mean? Well, hell
Right.
knows. What most of us still don't know what that means.
Well,
Right.
I mean, what I've found is that, a lot of, in my teaching, I'm teaching now at the University of Missouri Kansas City Conservatory, and one of the things that I find is that, sometimes students either have like sort of a natural acclimation to, like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what that would be like, and to project your voice, and then
Right.
other kids are just like, so much of their experience is just singing in ensembles, choral singing, and as I've said to them a million times, it's like, choral singing is where I got my initial start in singing. I didn't do any type of singing until I was in high school, and my high school choir had an excellent program. The guy who was the choir director there ended up becoming my stepdad. My mom was the assistant high school choir director, and they eventually fell in love and got married. Um,
Aw.
so that whole experience for me was so sort of monumental in not only inspiring me to want to pursue a career in singing, but that was my background from it. That being said, choral singing is very different than solo singing. And I
Yeah.
think if you approach, if you know the word singing as something that's just like, okay, I'm going to try to blend my voice with 15 or 20 other people and singing on the same part, that's a very different thing than like purposely trying to stick out, and not only stick
Yeah.
out, but like fill the hall.
Yeah. Totally. Totally.
So I think that, perhaps you came at it with the performing experience that you already had. Maybe the idea of support was something that you didn't need to necessarily work on, or was that something that later on in your studies you felt like you had to relearn or re-examine?
I had to actually, in a way, learn what that meant after I had my son,
Mm.
because again, I had come into singing as a dancer,
Hmm.
and my core was extremely strong, as it
Right.
had always been since I was a little girl. Like, I was raised as a dancer. I mean, I was going 3 times a week when I was
Oh
a
wow.
young woman, and so it was, I was strong. I wasn't skinny, but I was strong. And so when I learned how to sing, I learned how to sing really strong, in a really strong core.
Yeah.
So at the beginning,
Uh-oh, your
I,
video's frozen.
oh no, can you
Oh,
hear
there we
me?
go. Now we're good. Now we're good.
Sorry.
So
It
you
gave me
were
a lot of strength, I think, where I would have, I think it gave me a lot of strength that I didn't even realize I was getting because of that. I didn't, like, talk about taking something for granted, but you're not even taking it for granted. You legitimately don't even know that the way your body is functioning is working for singing because of strength, you know?
Right.
So it wasn't until after I had my son and basically the last 10 years of my life, but oh my God, there's like dogs fighting outside, where
There is some action going on in New York City today.
they are angry. They are having like.
And these are not even your dogs. These are just dogs around you.
No, I don't even know where they are. They're outside. Who knows? Some angry little neighbors' dogs. But the last 10 years have been crazy in learning now the actual mechanism kind of the support and what that means for my body, because obviously like my muscles were sort of, for lack of a better term, destroyed having a baby, and I had to figure out how to go back to singing.
Right.
You know, I wasn't one of those people that I didn't like singing when I was pregnant. I was uncomfortable because again, I had such a strong core. And so I was very like, I felt like I had a soccer ball when I was pregnant. You know, he was very like tight. And, and so every time I would sing, I think I was trying to activate my core muscles because that's what I would have done normally. And so I always felt like I was smushing him more. So I felt super uncomfortable. I didn't like it. And then when I get back, I remember though, getting like 2 months after he was born, starting to sing again because I was going to go out to LA to do a concert. And I remember it was like, it's basically like if you're accustomed to like lifting weights or something, like heavy weights, and then you go back to the gym after 5 months off and you go to pick up that same weight, you go to pick it up and your whole body goes, oh my God, it's like, what's happening? And that's like legitimately what my body felt.
Uh-oh. Are we there? Your picture is frozen on a really cool baritone claw. I don't know if you can hear me. Hello? You're frozen. If you can hear me, you're currently frozen. I don't know if there's a better connectivity play. There we go. Now you're here.
Is that better? Okay, I quickly turned off my Wi-Fi because I think we're having problems with our Wi-Fi.
Okay. There we go.
So hopefully that won't happen again.
Okay. So yeah, you were saying that it was like coming back from like if you'd been used to lifting heavy weights and then tried to come back to the gym. And so how did you go about strengthening those muscles or reworking that whole entire idea of support?
I mean, I basically just tried, I just tried to get back into the shape that I was accustomed to.
Right.
Which was tricky in the beginning, and I didn't have as much time to do it. I haven't yet had much time to do it. You know, time goes away quite quickly, right? When you have kids. So, but I think that my goal has always been to just try to get my core really more than anything back into shape, and also just physically, just like it's not even about the words like being fit. It's being fit for me, like being in a position in which my body's functioning kind of optimally at any given stage of my life.
Efficiently. Yeah. So when did you know, or when did someone tell you, that's usually how it happens, that you were a mezzo-soprano instead of a soprano? Because you mentioned you had these high C's, but of course you've had such a wonderful career as a mezzo-soprano. Was that a moment that you were surprised by, or that you were like, oh, okay, cool, that's what I am?
No, I just checked the box.
It was like, what voice part are you? You're like, there are less competition in the mezzo range. I will do that.
That's exactly right.
That's amazing. Well, if that's true, it's amazing that you've been able to so successfully navigate that entire repertoire. Slash also amazing that you haven't, I mean, you know, I'm familiar with your singing, and what I love about your singing is how effortless and beautiful, and just such a beautiful chiaroscuro balance. You know, it has the ping with the warmth, and you, unlike so many other mezzos, have never tried to over darken your tone or try to create something that's not you. And I feel like that's a pitfall that lots of mezzos fall into, you know. But talk a little bit about that. I mean, you know, I know you sang initially a lot of carabinos, rosinas, and Is Carabino something that you still come back to from time to time?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I basically like, he's going to be one of those until my knees give out. I'll play him.
Okay. I would imagine.
Right.
So you haven't been at a point yet where you've retired any of the roles that you sort of have come up with.
I've kind of retired Dorabella. She was the
Torabella.
first. I was like, it's fine. We're good. See you later.
It's fine. We've hung out quite enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, unless, yeah. And I would say that I've sort of at this point given up, not given up, but I've moved on from Zerlina because I sing Elvira now. So
Sure.
yeah.
What has that transition been like? So from going, because I mean that's when you I would think that Elvira has a bit more. I mean, it's obviously a role that's sung by some sopranos, some mezzos.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of, you want a lot of ping to it, a lot of bite to that sound. So it contrasts with Anna. You want to. How has singing stuff, let's say like Rosina and Carabino and some of the more lyric things into Elvira felt for
Yeah.
you?
I mean, Elvira for me was, I like her because of the character. I find her as a character so interesting. So you give me a play in which I can just be Elvira, I'm there because I think she's fascinating. And so the trick with her, at least for me, is how to get the intensity and the kind of anger and the edginess into the voice without it actually being in the voice.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, using the words. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can sing really easily and healthily and all of the other stuff, like especially the Barber and now the Rossinis, because it's sort of lighthearted, and what's best for singing, but being kind of lighthearted and smiling and it's all, oh, isn't that great? We can sing for days,
Right.
but when you're
Right.
like, ah,
When
that's when it gets a
when
little
you've been
harder.
treated like Elvira has been treated, you want some
Totally.
revenge.
Totally. And the funny thing, of course, was like, I was really happy to get rid of Zerlina because she's kind of annoying. And,
Yeah.
and I had to really, in a way, like I had to with certain other characters as well. I really had to reconcile my differences with the characters before I could play them honestly, the way I would want to play them honestly. And so I got to that place with Zerlina, which was great. But I always, I thought, it's like, if only I could sing two different arias. I'll still play Rosina, Zerlina, but give me different arias.
Yeah.
And then of course when I did Elvira, this is a couple summers ago for the first time, especially in the scenes where, and it was also because of the way they had decided, like how she was playing Zerlina and everything. I remember playing Elvira and being like, God damn, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. Like, why won't she listen? Like, you know what I mean? I was like,
Sure.
and on top of it, I was like, I'm telling you something. Why aren't you listening to me?
Right.
And it's funny because I knew I was going to have all of these wonderful challenges for her just vocally and as a character in terms of all the scenes with Don Giovanni, which was what I was really looking forward to. All of those really kind of interesting scenes that have to do with so much of their history that's obviously not in the show. Right. But I had actually kind of forgotten that I might, depending on how Zerlina was played, I might feel like supported by her in that, especially in that first scene where they come together and she's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Or I might feel like annoyed because she's not listening. And it added like that extra layer of frustration in the moment, which was, I look back at it and it makes me laugh, right? Because I'm like in her head and I'm just like, God damn it. Would you just
You've sung that role a number of times, yeah.
Right, exactly. And I'm like thinking, it was like, if I were you and I were me also, you'd be listening to me.
Right. What do you think vocally has been your most like technically challenging role that you've sung?
I don't know. They've all been challenging at some point or another.
Well, yeah, I mean, they each present their own sort of sets of challenges, but ones that you've looked at where you're just like,
well, and so each one of those, like especially the new pieces, like the contemporary roles that I've done, so like right. Ada in Cold Mountain, or even Miranda in The Tempest, and then Marnie, Nico Muhly's Marnie. I would say that each of those came at a time, like Miranda came first. And from Miranda, I really learned and had to learn how to like repeatedly sing A's all night long. And that was a big challenge when I first started, and then I figured it out, right? And then came...
well, wait, hold on. I got to find out, how did you figure it out? What was the initial challenge? And then what did you do technically? See, this is the stuff that I want to know. What
Yeah,
how did you find ease with that?
I think it was sheer repetition and the fact that I knew what free singing should feel like.
Hmm.
But, and so I would just try to find a way of getting to that feeling every time, regardless of what it was sounding like for a
Hmm.
while.
Hmm.
But to get to a feeling and then kind of worrying about the sound. Because I think sometimes, especially for high notes and things, we listen too often because we're too like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And we're
Right.
forgetting that it really has to feel good first.
Right.
So it's,
Right.
I think that's sort of what I tried. I honestly don't remember in that particular moment how I did it, but I do know I coached it with my teacher. I mean, I did it with my teacher like
Right.
over,
Over and over.
over, over and over again. You know, I was really well prepared for all of my repertoire in the beginning of my career more than I am now with like no time, right? Um, but I would say then, you know, then came Ada and Cold Mountain, and that presented a whole other host of issues. There was a lot of B's, like sustained B's, and like repeated, like just walking up the scale in the passaggio up there and then continuing up to B. That was hard.
Hmm.
And I would say that the first time I did it in Santa Fe, which I love being in Santa Fe, but I don't do very well singing in Santa Fe.
That's not a
I
yeah. That altitude is no joke,
Yeah, and I
and
find
the
that
dryness too.
the dryness, I find that for me, the dryness affects me more than the altitude because I've sung in Aspen before and I don't
Yeah.
actually have much issue.
Right.
Um, like the air is tricky, but once I'm acclimated to the altitude, the dryness isn't the same. So I find that that is really difficult. So when I did it the second time in Philadelphia, I felt much more comfortable vocally. And also I was coming back, you know, after a little bit of time off and kind of reapproaching it.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then Marnie had its whole other thing. Marnie was long. Marnie was a big sing. She was on stage all the time, singing all the time, very rangy. You know, and Nico was like, when he was writing it, and he was like, "What do you like to sing?" I was like, "Well, I like kind of like big leaps." I was like, "I don't really like these like noodly things," because I had come from Cold Mountain and I was thinking like, don't write me like EFGA and then
Right.
FB kind of thing.
Right. Right.
I didn't want that again. So I was like, oh, let's do some like leaps. I love octaves. I can do. So then he was like, here's a 13th and here's like, you know, like
Careful what you wish for.
exactly. Exactly. So then I was dealing with that and dealing with, that was heavy emotionally, very heavy emotionally. So, and life also during Marnie was really heavy emotionally. And so there was a lot going on. So, but it teaches you how to get through things, or at least try to get through things, you know?
True. That's very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
So what sort of projects have you been focused on, while we're all kind of been twiddling our thumbs and waiting for the world to come back and seeing what direction it's going to go next? I mean, over the last,
Yeah.
since February.
Ugh, I know. It's so weird, right? It's
It
so
really
strange.
is to think that that's been like that long.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
really
I mean,
weird.
and it's going to be a year. We're in this for a year for sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, more than that. I mean, when you think of like when it actually shut down, and places like the Met have already closed until, I guess they're going to probably do something maybe in the summer 22 or 21. But yeah, they've already closed their whole season for next year, and many others have followed suit. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I think obviously the only way to come back safely is once a vaccine is available, and then, we find out that it's safe, and then everybody gets on board. But I mean,
Yeah.
in the meantime, though, what kind of things have kept you busy?
Well, I mean, I've been lucky that I've been doing quite a few number of projects with Carnegie, which is great. And we have another
Virtually?
one. Yeah, yeah, all virtual projects.
Yeah.
I worked, you know, I did like an hour long sort of like perspective episode sort of with
Mhm.
them where I and Adrienne Fuchs, who works there, put together a program which was a combination of archival videos and the pandemic videos that we all started making back in April and May.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a combination of those things and an interview and singing music from all of the genres that I really like. So there was some musical theater and jazz and opera, and so we did that, and and I'm going to work on a couple of other projects for a couple of other companies and something else for Carnegie. I've been teaching as much as I can,
That's great.
which is great, and I love it. Um, but it's not, it's hard, right? Because everybody's teaching.
The
Yeah,
soul sucking screen of death. It's like,
yeah,
we try to have good energy, and we try to like, okay, let's, okay, so let me hear that again. And then depending on what the student has available, I mean, it would be great if everybody had an audio interface plugged in with an XLR mic that had like a great set of speakers, and but sometimes we're working with a student that's on their iPhone in a bathroom, or sometimes we're working, it's like, it just depends on what the situation is. But yeah, it can be rewarding and frustrating sort of simultaneously.
yeah. Of course, and there are plenty of moments, right, where you say, "Well, this is what I'm hearing, so let's try this and let's see how it feels." I mean, I've always said in teaching, like, how does it feel?
Right.
How legitimately, like, really, how does it feel? Don't listen to yourself right now. Also, because, like, if I can get that kind of feedback, it's easier for me to help versus like what it sounds like, because what it sounds like is also dependent now on these little machines that we're looking at, right?
Right.
So there's that. But no, it's been nice. I was one of the artists in residence this summer for the Glimmerglass Young Artists,
Oh,
and
cool.
so I taught virtually all summer. But they've got a really large body of young artists, so it was great. I had a great summer working, however many days it was a week that I was working, doing the teaching, and then we finished that up, and now I am one of the artists in residence for WNO for the young artists, which is great because there's only 11 of them. So it means
Oh,
that
that's great.
over the course of the year, yeah, I'll get a lot more one-on-one time with each of them, I hope.
Yeah.
And so far it's been just wonderful, and they're so good, and um, they're really eager to learn, and they're good, so you're working with high level singers,
Oh
and
yeah, that it is such a treat to work with
yeah,
young
yeah,
professionals that are kind of in the game already, that are like,
yeah,
not to say anything. I love my students. I love my conservatory students, but
yeah,
there is a certain level of work that can be done when they're at that level of focus or
yeah. But it's all
desire.
different stages, like when you think of like an athlete, it's like you can absolutely love to train and to teach like young kids or to
Yeah,
teach like high schoolers.
yeah,
And then you can also equally love to train, an elite athlete, because what it also does is that it forces you to hone in on different skills throughout your teaching, right? So you're not just teaching kind of like the same types of skills in one group level. You're teaching these skills, and then you're really honing in on those like tiny, practically invisible points that take that person from young artist, to then hopefully into their career, right?
right, right.
And it's wonderful to watch, and I mean, to see people like light up from something that feels good.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I had a moment just like that this past week where one of my 18-year-old freshman girls, she we were talking about support. We were talking about the necessity of making sure that the way we breathe allows or grants access to the full instrument. And I like to talk a lot about how, the singing voice and the singing instrument, it's obviously inside of our bodies. We don't have the luxury of being able to put it into a case and not worry about it. And I said,
Yeah.
however, those instruments that do get put into a case, like if you take, for example, a clarinet, you can put together the reed on the clarinet and that first little mouthpiece, and you can still make a noise. And then you can put the first part of it on there and you can still make another noise. But it doesn't really sound like a clarinet until it's completely put together. And I
Yep.
try to make that analogy to granting access to our full instrument by making sure that when we take a breath, we really grant access to that lower torso, so that we then have the ability to lean down on the body, so that when we sing, what enables us to project our sound, as opposed to like, the traditional sort of, I don't want to say, well, I'll just say that, it's very traditional in a choral setting to take these little catch breaths, where you're kind of breathing from here up and you're like, da 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 da, and you don't really, I mean, again, the whole point is to blend. They don't want you to stick out. And um, I think for a lot of those younger singers, it's sort of like these, wait a minute, I can't believe that, this is what we need to be focusing on. And I actually used an analogy of like one of my graduate students. he's a new father. They just had a baby like 6 weeks ago.
Aw.
I know. And so I'm like, man, the fact that you're even able to have lessons is kind of incredible.
Yeah.
But I told him, I was like, watch your baby when he cries, you know, or they had a
Oh
daughter.
yeah.
It's such an
Oh
incredible thing to just watch how an
yeah.
infant expands and then that
Wah!
match right. And I was having some of my students, I'm like, show me what it sounds like to cry like a baby. And they're like, I go, but commit to it, be silly, be ridiculous, you know. And they were really finding this whole like "Wah, wah," you know, this really sort of like lower
Yeah.
body engagement through
Yeah.
being goofy. And I have to say that like it was kind of amazing. And to see, like you mentioned, you know, it's like you see these like faces light up like, oh my God, I never realized I could make a sound that was so. And I'm like, yeah, that's the thing about babies. They are loud and they never go hoarse. And there's a reason for that. You know, it's like they have this primal instinct built in that, you know, I think we as opera singers are constantly sort of trying to remind ourselves to get rid of all that stupid muscular effort that we're trying. I don't know what it is,
Yeah.
and get back to sort of a primal kind of instinctual sort of projected sound. But how, you know, you mentioned through your work with Carnegie, singing like jazz and musical theater and also opera. How would you describe what you do specifically to get into sounding like a jazz singer and not sounding ridiculous, to singing like musical theater rep and not sounding operatic or too
Yeah.
jazzy, and then in your sort of, you know, most comfortable genre, probably, you know,
Yeah.
singing
Yeah.
opera.
Well,
Because
because
I
it's what I
know I grew up, I wanted to be a country and western singer. I wanted to I wanted to be Garth Brooks, George Strait, Clint Black. And from time to time, like I'm with Alex Fletcher, and we started this new thing called Fame, Fletcher Artist Management Entertainment. And it's like a subscription channel where you can go on and sort of like, if you know, there it's marketed to different fan bases with different artists
right.
who have sung, you know. So,
That's cool.
you know, I've sung a lot in Seattle, for example, so they can market to the Seattle audience and say, hey, you want to get to see a different side of Weston. And like I told this really cool story where I was singing in Nashville. I was singing Scarpia with Nashville Opera, and we had to do a donor event, and I sang Carousel. I sang the If I Loved You, and
Yeah.
I told a story though about like, you know, it's amazing to be here. The first time I'm singing in Nashville. It's interesting because I always wanted to sing in Nashville, but I always thought I would hopefully be at the Opry instead of the opera. And I told them the story about how I sang "The Dance" by Garth Brooks, and I won my high school talent show. Blah blah blah. So afterwards, they come up to me and they're like, "You know that the director of PR, her dad is Tony Arata." And I was like, Tony Arata. And then I was like, that dude wrote The Dance. He wrote the song The Dance that Garth Brooks, you know, made famous. And so I got to meet him and hang out with him. But anyway, I sang that song and told that story for the Fame thing. But the thing I kept getting so mad at myself for was like every time I would sing and I was like, that's too vibrato. Like I'm singing too, it sounds too like good, you know what I mean? So how do you specifically make sure that when you're singing jazz, you're like in that jazz zone? And like I said, musical theater and opera.
I think like I think for the most part, I think first and foremost, I try not to think too hard about whether it's like right or wrong, but more what am I trying to emphasize in each style versus like what I would try to strip away from what I do for a living to make the styles happen.
That
So
because you're smart. That's good. I like
so like
that.
I would think, I would think like for example, going like I was working on I just did I'll post it at some point, but I did the song Moment in the Woods from Sondheim's Into the
I love it. Anything can
Yeah.
happen in the woods. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That was the
Yeah.
first role I ever did, was Cinderella's
It,
Prince and the Wolf.
and that's exactly it. Like all the opera singers, all the to be opera singers end up being those characters, right?
Right.
So I sang those. So I was doing the Baker's Wife song, right? And where she says like, she starts, she's like, what was that? Like when she, after she finishes like making out with the prince. And
Yeah.
she's like, was that him? Was that me? Did a prince really kiss me and kiss me and kiss me? And did I kiss him back? Right. And the whole thing, like going through it, at first, going through it first, you're like, was that him? Was that me? Did a prince really kiss me and kiss me? And then you're like, okay, all right, let's just it's not
Simplify.
so much about, it's not, yeah, it's not even about like, how do I shift it? It's just like, okay, what's my goal? My goal is to sound like I'm talking more than anything.
Right.
And so then you just sort of simplify, like I just start saying the text, like, was that me? Was that me? Was that me? Was that him? And then thinking of other points where it's like normally you'd be mic'd, so you don't have to make a lot of sound.
Right.
You don't have to worry. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be supported, but it just shifts your
You're not
mindset.
reliant upon resonance to allow,
Yeah.
your sound to travel. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then you play around with it, because you have to find a way of accessing sort of like the top where you would normally go into a full on like legit sound. You have to be
Yeah.
able to access that in a way that is a little more not even simple, but just like, if anything, smaller. And I find that if I really tell myself not to sing loudly, I can access that space much more easily. But the minute I try to project, I have to go into a more legit sound.
Right.
So it's just a matter of pulling back essentially more dynamically in order to access what I know I can access from musical theater stuff. And then like with the jazz, I don't worry too much, because I grew up listening to Ella Fitzgerald and Frank Sinatra. They were like my two go-tos for everything. And they have wonderfully free voices and wonderfully legit voices, right?
Did you hear that video of only
Of him
recently,
singing opera, the
La
La
Cira
Ciudad.
del Lamano? Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep,
good.
I did, and he was himself. He's like, La ci daremmo la mano.
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
La mi dirai di sì. It's like, you're like, that's Frank.
You're like, okay.
But that was kind of like, it was wonderful to see that, actually, because I thought, we don't have to sing it like him, but the charm is can still be there, right? But I don't know, like with jazz, I think jazz is probably the one where, even though I sang with a jazz band when I was in high school, it's probably the one where I might be most self-conscious, because there's just I don't know why, actually, but I think maybe it's just me, but I think I would obviously sing it more to the effect, like the way I would sing something musical theater-ish. I would
Right.
and even more so, what I would be more concerned about would be where I'm singing it in my voice. So like musical theater, I can play around more in terms of range. Whereas like the jazz stuff, I would try to keep it even lower. I would just put it in a lower place in my voice.
What are some of your favorite jazz standards to sing?
Oh God. I mean, I used to sing Someone to Watch Over Me when I was in high school, like at our at our talent shows.
Yeah.
I would sing that, and I sang, anything Gershwin, Jerome Kern, Irving Berlin.
All of it.
I mean, there's just so much. Oh my God. I like Cole Porter, but he's actually not one of my favorites. Sacrilege, probably, but
Hey.
I like Jerome Kern a lot, and and I grew up watching all the movies, all the Technicolor movies in black and white, dancing and singing Hollywood films, and
Right.
I love all that stuff. So, and to me, the singing from that and into the jazz, like when you listen to Lena Horne singing Stormy Weather, it's her singing Stormy Weather. It's not like you're there going like, this is a jazz tune. It's just like, no, this is just her singing this song perfectly. And I don't care what the genre is. It's just beautiful music.
Right.
Yeah.
Who else are some of your favorite artists of the past or present that you've always loved listening to, or that you find yourself going back to?
I mean, I still go back to all the ladies of song, and like Nina Simone and Billie Holiday, and a lot of Doris Day. I used to love listening to Doris Day when I was younger. I still do. And then of course the men, from like Bing Crosby to all the characters in the Rat Pack, and I'm trying to think of all these other people. There's so many. Oh my God, Fred Astaire. He really wasn't really a singer, but
Sure.
he had his own quality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like that, moving out of that era.
Or even genre. Like, who are some of the musical theater people that you?
Yeah, oddly, I don't know enough of the musical theater people by name. because I never spent a lot of time actually listening. I would say that by the time I would have spent a lot of time listening to musical theater, I was already at Juilliard.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah.
So, and so then I was distracted. I mean,
A little bit.
some of my contemporaries, I mean, like one of my friends, Jessica Vosk, is like amazing. She's one of those people, she opens her mouth and I'm just like, I know.
Isn't that amazing? Like some of those,
Teach me how to do that.
I have to say that I do think that there's something that any opera singer can learn from watching good musical theater.
Yeah.
Every time I go see a show, in New York on Broadway or whatever, it's like a level of energy and a level of entertainment and a level of connection with the audience that's just like, this is how you get packed houses like every night. It's like there's that kind of, now, the genre is what it is, and it's the marketing, and it's the, a lot of times it's the shows we know and love, and it's the the show that's been made from the Disney animated movie or whatever it is that gets it in there. But I really have always been just in awe of the heightened level of performance and energy and just sort of like that palpable connection, that you feel in a show like that. I mean, we always shoot for that, but I think more often than not, I think we're in our medium, we're sort of in a larger space, that's not so intimate. And I don't know, sometimes there are too many things maybe to hide behind, but I don't know. I think that certainly a lot to be learned from watching what people do successfully in other genres.
Yeah, in all fields.
Yeah,
It's wonderful
totally.
to watch. And elite anything, I think, is fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
If you could sing anything, what would you want to sing? Any genre, any role, any whatever.
Oh God, I don't know. So many things.
Or specifically in your Fach, is there a role that you've just always been dying to sing that you haven't had an opportunity to do, or something that you have purposefully held off on?
Well, I mean, I held off on Carmen for a while. I was supposed to do that. I would have been doing that now. We would have opened already in Houston.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that would have happened, but that's okay. Carmen was probably the only role I knew about when I first started opera.
That was the one role that you're like, not over my dead body.
Yeah, well, but I was like, it was the only one I knew about too. But I was like, I don't think I'm ready for that one anyway. But I think that, I mean, I've always been, and maybe because this is my family or the way we all deal with things here, but like I've never. This is weird. I think I've never desired things in that sense. That's not to say that I haven't wished to do things, but it's more like I don't sit down and say, oh, I just wish I could sing this. I really, really wish, like, when is that going to happen? I really want to do that. It's more like, I'm just happy doing whatever it is that I'm doing at the moment. And so I've always been, yeah, I mean, I guess it is in some ways, but and I wonder sometimes, like, I think sometimes there is a lot to be said about also knowing and listening to yourself, and listening to the things that you do wish for and that you do want, and even not even just in your career, right, but in your life as well.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to listen to that voice and not ignore it. So I don't think I was necessarily ignoring it. I think for opera, I didn't know enough about it to have like those wishes and dreams. I think my biggest wishes and dreams were just to be able to do what I'm doing, to perform and to continue performing in different mediums, because it's not all opera for me. Like I'd love to do other mediums, so it's been great to do West Side Story, like when I did that with Yannick down in Philadelphia a couple of years ago, whenever that was, or doing On the Town with Michael Tilson Thomas in San Francisco, and having done that with the Broadway group that did it on Broadway, and then being able to have those friendships now since then, and see them doing their jobs and having them come to the opera and really like connecting the worlds in which I love the music that happens in them, right? It was a horrible sentence.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean?
Well, I think everybody understood you perfectly. I mean, what an incredible opportunity to blend those passions with being able to actually you yourself be singing and performing alongside those and then have them, I mean, have you, well, let's say, what were there any surprises in that experience with you? Like, what, did anything come as a huh, I didn't expect that? Or when you had the opportunity to do something like what you mentioned, West Side Story, or the uh,
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely nervous, which I expected. I was nervous, but I wasn't nervous so much about the audience as I was my peers, because, you know, a lot of the peers there that are in like the musical theater world, right?
right,
I felt like I had to prove to them that I could do it, not to the audience.
right,
That
right,
I wanted them to feel that the person who was playing that part, even though it was coming from the opera world, was right for it.
yeah,
And I really felt like, you know, I worked hard at being as good as I could be in that moment, because I wanted them to like it, right? And I don't know, I don't really feel like that on the opera stage, but I think it's also
I don't care
because,
what they think of me.
well, I mean, but I also, yeah, but you shouldn't, in a way,
No, I
you
know.
know. I want my colleagues to enjoy their time on stage with me, just as I want to enjoy my time on stage with them.
Sure,
And I want it to be, you know, a very good like ping pong game between the two of us at all times, you know. So
of course.
I want to, as all of us, right? We want to be there for our colleagues. We want to be able to give them what they need if they are needing something in a moment. You know, it's like, you know, when somebody has an aria and you're just listening, you're like, just tell me, what do you need from me? I'll give it to you, right?
Right.
So I think with the musical theater stuff, it was a lot of that, but it was also a lot of like when I was doing my own thing, I was hopeful that they were like, oh, she's good, like that's legit, like that works for this part. And also just even like the little scenes, you know, just the spoken dialogue. And you know, I that's how I felt about it, you know. And
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
good. It was
Something
a
that we
good
don't get to
driving
do
force.
too often.
Yeah, it was a good driving force. It was a good challenge. And yeah, I mean, I loved it. I'll do it
I'm
again.
sure.
Yeah.
Michael Purim says you maybe you've done this already, but you should develop a lounge act for places like the Carlisle and do an album of Broadway hits. So there you go.
I would love to. I would. Both of those ideas are terrific, actually. Actually, if anybody has any ideas for kind of a fun, upbeat, it could be musical theater, even like Disney song that I should sing, let me know.
That's an incredible thing to throw out there, and I am 100% certain you will have lots of ideas very soon.
Somebody's gonna be like, sing like Into the Unknown from Frozen 2. I'm like, I
Well, yeah, that's a rabbit hole that you can go down to on YouTube.
don't know. Yeah,
How old is Teo now?
he's 10.
10. So Amelia is 9. And how has that been? Is he going to school virtually, or is he going in person, or yeah.
Yeah, it's virtual still.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so is my daughter, and yeah. So it's an interesting time that we find ourselves in at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I
I wish I
definitely
could do that with my eyebrows, but
oh,
like,
I know
mhm.
mine has gotten better over the last 6 months too. I think that I was always like rolling my eyes when people be like, "Oh, so what do you do with all your free time?" I'd be like, "I'm gonna punch you in the face in my free time." That's
Exactly.
what I'm gonna do. I'd be like, "You clearly don't have children."
Yep.
Like, there is no free time. There's like barely any free. Like today, the most free time I had was because I had to go do a photo shoot. This is not how I normally dress up, you know. So like, I had to leave the house in the morning. A friend of mine was like lucky enough I got a friend of mine that could come over and just be here in the house, because it wasn't like he could go anywhere. He had to do his virtual. So that's the other problem, is like before he'd go to school and then I could like go around and do what I needed to
Right. You
do.
have your 8
Now
to 3 day or whatever.
yeah, and it's like, as you know, like now they're in school, and so like I have to be in the house with him during the school hours. I'm locked in.
Yeah. It's tricky.
And so that has its own challenges, you know. Like a friend of mine would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get lunch, or I'm gonna go do this." I'm like, she's like, "You want to join me?" I was like, "I can't."
Do I want to join you? Yes. Can I?
You
No.
correct, exactly. Do I want to? Yes. Can I? No. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but I feel better about him doing virtual school right now. Like there is an option for his school to go in person, but we live with my mom and she's 78, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't feel safe risking it. And
Yeah, it's not
it's
just,
actually not even so much him being in the school building, because I actually think they're all very safe at school.
yeah,
It's more just like, how am I going to commute him there, because it's relatively far from where we live,
yeah,
and I'm not gonna take the subway yet with him. I just
right,
won't.
right.
Even though I'm a gritty New Yorker, I'm not that gritty.
I hear you. I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah.
What are you most looking forward to at this moment?
I'm looking forward to reassessing my entire career, and yeah, and
You can do that right now, by the way.
yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of looking forward to. I mean, I am doing that, and I have been
Right.
for months already. But that's I guess more to say is, like, I'm looking forward to what I'm already doing, which is trying to reassess and reprioritize, and make some changes fundamentally, not even just for myself, but on a business level, for my friends, my colleagues, in a bigger way, much bigger way, that will hopefully allow us to come back into the business with a different structure. Because I think that the structure of the business that we have been in for the last 15 years, or however many years people have been in it,
Yeah.
doesn't work very well. And I think that it's not about, like, people having done things wrong. It's not like he said, she said. It's not like you did something wrong, we did something right. It's just that, the opera world, I think, has struggled for a lot of really normal reasons. We deal with the business as a lot of little money on a whole. There's no government support. There's a lot of
Right.
things that, as we know, that the arts suffer quite a bit in this country. And so it's not saying, oh, the companies are doing it wrong. It's just that within the structure that we're working in, it's the big structure isn't really working, and the small structure isn't really working. So I'm just kind of hoping to keep on working hard and make some changes, and hopefully it'll have, like, a long-term effect and a good effect for people, aside from myself. That's what's most important for me, is that it's longer lasting.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, totally.
so yeah, so I have a lot of things in my mind about the business, and um, how I would love, if we all, like, if there were, like, a switch, flipped in the
Right.
fall, like next fall, and we were to all go back to work, like this was all done. I,
Yeah.
I am hoping we don't go back to what it was. I'm actually really hoping we go.
I don't think we could. I mean, I honestly, I mean, we've seen so much change happen already on a number of different platforms,
Yeah,
just with more inclusion and equality and
yeah.
diversity and, all sorts of good, positive things that should have happened decades and decades ago.
Oh yeah, of
Um,
course.
so
Yeah,
I don't think that we could possibly go back in the fall of 21 and have it just be like, okay, the same old thing. I think it's going to
yeah,
be, I think it'll definitely be um, different, but in a great way.
yeah, yeah. I would love it. If I would love it.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be exciting to see how individual companies make those changes and make those choices to bring people back and show that they I don't know
Yeah.
are purposely trying in a different way to find how they can be. Oh my goodness, my doggy.
Oh,
Oh. Today's the first day that it's actually been kind of cool here in Houston, and she's got her little sweater on. I know.
oh my God, that's too
Well,
cute.
I cannot hear. Let's see if we can. Where's she? Oh, now she disappeared.
Oh,
Oh well, she's out of here. Anyway, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate you taking your time out of your day and sharing your thoughts with us. And it's so
well,
great
it's a
to see you.
pleasure. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry that I was late. I'm not usually late to these Zoom things. Today was an exception, and I'm sorry.
it's okay. We held curtain. It was fine. It's very. There was no problem. So I'm
I've
just so
only,
glad.
I've only had the curtain has only been held once for me in my career, just once, because I was sick. I was sick at intermission, like vomiting,
Oh
sick.
no.
Yeah,
Oh my
I was doing Cozy at the Met. One of the first times I did it, and I think he was an infant. He was like 5 months old.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so on top of it, I was just all shades of sick. And I think I had eaten something bad. I must have had like food poisoning. And I
Yeah.
remember going to the theater, getting ready for Act One, and I was like, I don't feel great. I'm not really sure what's happening, but I don't feel terrific. And then like halfway through Act One, I was like, oh, I really don't feel good. And I
Oh no.
remember like my dress, my corset just kept on feeling like it was getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
Oh my God.
Because I was just like getting ill, you know? And I remember I was like, just make it through Act One, make it through Act One. And I remember then leaving the stage during intermission and going like straight into my dressing room. And Susie, who I love, I was like, Susie, I got to get out of this. I have to get out. And she like ripped me out of my dress basically. Yeah, I threw up a bunch of times.
Oh
I was like on the floor of the dressing room and I was like,
oh no.
yeah. And so then she was like, are you going to be okay? And I was like, I think I'm okay now. And so they all came back and they were like, are you okay? They're like, do you want us to like hold the curtain?
Right. Or do we need to
like,
get somebody else?
And of course I felt really bad. I was like, can I just have 5 minutes?
Right.
And they were like, yes, that's fine. And so they held the curtain for 5 minutes. I eventually got up. She put me back into my Act Two dress and I finished the night and I was fine by the end of the show. And then I kind of relapsed before I went to bed, but I got the show done and I was like,
wow. That's amazing.
But, you know, we all have stories like that, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I wouldn't even say that that's embarrassing. That's just like unfortunate.
Oh, it just sucks.
Do you have any embarrassing moments that you can share that like you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened?
I mean, I have like I've tripped and fallen a lot of times on stage, especially like playing Cherubino. You know, like
I love how you say that. Like I trip and fall all the time.
Yeah, I don't know. For somebody who's like pretty coordinated, like there are moments on stage where like I literally I'm like, what happened here? You know, I don't know. I'm thinking like again, falling over and doing stuff like that happens all the time. Or I mean, one really embarrassing moment, which was just like. And I knew it was going to happen. I just knew it. Like even when I was learning the role, which is the worst, it was when I was doing Pelléas and Mélisande, and in the well scene, you know, and she's supposed to be like throwing her ring around,
right,
and throwing it up and down and watching it like glitter in the sunlight and catching it, and then she throws it and she accidentally doesn't catch it and it falls into the well.
Did it fall in the pit?
No, but I dropped it too soon.
Oh,
because I didn't catch it like I was supposed to the first 3 times I threw it up in the air.
Right.
And it was so obvious because those are one of those things you really like, even though you're like, okay, well, I knew. I was like, what if it slips through my fingers? Okay, I just don't follow it with my eyes. But of course, in order for it to register to the audience when you're doing your throws, you have to follow it with your eyes. You also have to follow it with your eyes so you can catch it.
Right.
Right. And so I just remember, and I'm singing at the same time and like, and then it was like, what? And I remember like looking up and Paul Appleby's like,
oops.
Right. Because that's the other thing in the music, and like literally like 2 bars later in the music, you hear, and then she goes, oh, I dropped it in the well.
Right.
And so I was like, in that moment, you know, you have like, it feels like an hour, but of course it's like a millisecond where your brain goes through all the possible options of what you should do. And I was like, okay. So I kept on throwing like an invisible ring, you know, because what was I going to do? Because it was in the music, you know?
Right.
And so then of course, the moment came where it dropped and the audience laughed.
Oh,
like the whole freaking Met audience noticed and saw and then laughed.
And then laughed.
They were probably just like, what you gonna do?
Right. No, not too many choices in that moment.
No, I mean, those were one of those moments where like it was hard. That was the first time it was really hard to play off a mistake. You know, I've forgotten letters and keys and things. So I've done things where I've had to like hand a letter to somebody on stage and I didn't have it in my pocket or something. And so I had to walk and stand actually like in front of them, like upstage.
While they read it.
And then I'd be like, I don't have it. And so then I'd be like, pretend to get something in my pocket and I'd be like, here, and the audiences can't see me, you know, stuff like that.
Right. Well, one of the moments that I realized, because you're right, in those moments when they happen, in your brain, you're like, oh my God, everybody has figure this out. They've all seen me for the fraud that I've become. I was singing this role, Wiedhopf, in Walter Braunfeld's Die Vögel at we were doing the American premiere of this at the Spoleto USA Festival in Charleston. And Wiedhopf is this type of bird. There's all these different birds, right? He's the hoop, which is some sort of specific bird from Australia, I think. But anyway, at the end, the nightingale is alive, and she's like the only bird that lives, and all the other birds die. And so we're all laying on the ground dead. Well, and it was a pretty raked stage. And as I'm laying there, and this was a pretty long show, and you hydrate like you do, and I'm laying there on the stage, and I'm like, I have to pee so bad. I don't know what I'm going to do. And I'm supposed to be dead. I can't. I literally had this thought. I was like, I can't pee in my costume. It'll go down the rake of the stage and it'll go in the orchestra. This is terrible. What am I going to do? And I was like, okay, I'm just going to stand up and walk off stage and go to the bathroom. And so that's exactly what I did. I just got up, walked off stage. I remember the stage manager looking at me. She was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I gotta pee." And she, and so I ran and then I was finished and I came back and she was like, the opera's still going on. And so I was like, so I walked back out on stage, laid back down. And of course, the whole time I'm thinking, I'm fired. They're going to replace me with somebody else. They're going to let my cover do the rest of the shows. Everyone's going to know, like, how come, what happened? No one that I asked even knew what I was talking about. I was like, you didn't see me stand up and leave the stage. I mean, now granted, it was like the whole chorus were different types of birds. So the whole chorus was out there laying on the ground. The tree that the nightingale was in was sort of the main focus, and that's where the primary lights were and so forth. But
oh my God.
A moment where I just thought, oh my God, I've ruined everything. People didn't even know. And it's so amazing.
That's hilarious. That is surprising because that's like pretty.
You're supposed to be dead and you get up and leave. And then you come back like 2 minutes later. You're like, oh.
Yeah. There's so many of those moments. Or like, I remember stepping in to do Rosina and Barbara Seville, obviously, but in Vienna, but like not even stepping in, actually, we were just doing it, but we had like 3 days of rehearsal. Right. Yeah. So, and I remember this was the first time I had done that production. And there's just one move, like in one of the transitions from like scene to recit or whatever. And she comes like running down these stairs. And because of the nature of, they're like these little spiral stairs. So because of the nature of the stairs, by the time you get down to the bottom, you're like, wait, where's the audience?
Right.
And also because it's the end of a recit, you actually feel like you're done and you sort of forget, maybe because there was a cut in the piece, or I can't remember what it was, but they said, don't forget. They were like, don't leave the stage. And I was like, why would I leave the stage? I have a scene coming up next. They're like, well, we had a Rosina do it once. And I think because they put it in my mind, sure enough,
you left.
One night, but thank God, because one night I ran down and I ran out the side of the stage. And as soon as I hit like the board on the outside, I was like, ah!
You were like, I'm supposed to be back.
Yeah. And so I turned around and I was like, like,
oh my gosh. That's so good. That's so good.
It's like all this stuff that happens, or like, you're like, oh, I forgot to change my shoes, or, oh, or you start laughing. Like Matt Polenzani, he always makes me laugh on stage. And, and I always tell him, I'm like, stop it. But he always makes me laugh, so we like have these deals. He's like, you can't, like in Don Giovanni, I'm like, don't look at me. Right. Like, because I am so now primed that he could be singing Dalla sua pace and being super serious, and I'll laugh at him the whole time. And he might not be like trying to be funny anymore.
Right. He's like, I'm just trying to sing my aria, but because you're there.
And he's like, yeah, right. Exactly. He's like, thanks very much, Leonard. But it's so Pavlovian at this point now that he's be like, and also because we've done it before where he's going to be like, da la sua pace, la.
Oh yeah.
Like he's like whatever in rehearsal. And I'm always like, so I really, really, really have to focus on stage with him because he's very funny.
Good.
But other than that, yeah, I don't know. There's all sorts of good stories, all sorts of fun stuff.
Well, like I said, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time with us, and it was such a great opportunity to see you again and talk with you. And
I know.
I hope that it's sooner than later that we get to run into each other again soon.
Ugh, I hope so. I
Yeah.
know. I'm getting tired of all this.
Right.
Yeah, I know
Well,
we all are. We all
I
are.
know. I know. Well, hang in there.
Yeah,
And
you too. Hopefully things will start to look up globally in the next
exactly.
month.
I hope so too. I hope so. We shall see. Well, thanks again, and I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful
Thank
weekend.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All
You
right.
too.
Mwah. Thank you. Bye. All right. I think, okay, we're good. All right.